peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
It is ridiculous and it is against the laws of nature that we can have somebody sitting pretty who takes home more money than the credible entrepreneur who is doing actual production of goods and services.
We always say it as it is. It is only in this country that when a thief is arrested, you hear elders from their tribe saying, "He is our son and he is our thief."
If you are deviant and I call you leader,
Yes.
probably you are already a leader, but you are leading in the wrong direction.
We want to see the role of the youth
Yeah.
in the security,
Yes.
governance,
Yes.
and development.
The youth that I meet and work with here, you know, we call them the millennials and X's and Y's, this and that. They don't necessarily want to live like their fathers and grandfathers,
Yes.
do business like their fathers and grandfathers. They're more independent, they're better educated, and they're the ones that are making everything move in this region.
We look at the issues, we talk about issues that impact people's lives in Africa. The African peoples themselves continue to cheer bad leaders, and because they cheer them on, they continue to be misled.
Let me ask you, doctor, would you rather be somebody who does not enjoy so much freedom but you are rich?
Yes.
Or you'd rather be poor who you are actually imprisoned by the poverty itself?
My goal is not to come here and say, I want the majority ownership, I want to own this, I want to own that, I want to do this. My goal is we all make money and we're all happy, and I help build a big business here.
Punchline is for Africa, with Africa, from Africa.
We discuss Africa. We see what ails Africa. And today, this afternoon, we want to see whether Sudan will permanently remain a sick child of Africa. Is it a permanent sickness? Can we resolve the issues of Southern Sudan? Is it something that has gone wrong for 200 years? There has always been a problem in Southern Sudan, in that great region, starting from all the way the Alimadi wars and the rest of all what happened until today. Peace seems to be elusive. Why has UN taken slow action? Why hasn't UN set up a tribunal? We want to see a tribunal that will make sure that Southern Sudan people are accountable. Those who committed crimes against the human beings. 20,000 Sudanese perished. They are perished. They are not accountable. Nobody can account for them. And we cannot sit here, go on hammering peace agreements without mechanisms of accountability. If we set a tribunal for Sierra Leone, for Rwanda, for Camera Rouge, we need somebody to stand up for the poor masses, the masses that have died, the masses that continue to die, the masses that are being brutalized, murdered, maimed on a daily basis by marauding armies of both Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. There must be an accountability. You are not going to sit here and tell people there is no accountability in Southern Sudan. There must be a tribunal. Why do we run to harass countries of Kenya, put ICC on Kenya, put ICC on this country, put ICC on Central African Republic? Why have we delayed on putting a tribunal for Southern Sudan to find out who is killing, who has been killing, how they have been killing people? Let me speak for the people in Southern Sudan, the women, the children who have not gone to school, the children who have no medicine, the children who have nothing, who have been running since 2013, and the war cannot end because of two people. Let them face the tribunal. I'm not going to keep quiet as a Pan-African to see Southern Sudan being maimed, being tortured, being cut, dismembered, and we keep quiet and watch people got images of people, of malcontents singing to us in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in South Africa, telling us they have money. Let them face the international tribunal and tell the tribunal who gave them the guns, where they buying them, how they were killing people. Enough of is enough. Enough is enough for Africa. We have had enough. There is no need of that anymore. Enough is enough. And if people have died, they will not cry. We people who are left on planet Earth must cry for them. We must find justice for them. We must make sure that there are leaders who go on bragging on television stations all over the world, who are accountable. They must be behind bars.
The U.S. is sanctioning a lot of countries right now. Russia, Venezuela, Iran, North Korea, Syria, Nicaragua, Cuba. When the U.S. imposes these sanctions alone, which is often the case, they're technically called unilateral coercive economic measures. The U.S. is the only country that thinks it has this sort of universal jurisdiction to financially crush anybody, anywhere with sanctions, because the U.S. controls the world's economy thanks to the dollar. The intended purpose of these sanctions is to coerce the government of the targeted country to change its behavior to America's liking, or to make the population suffer so much that they overthrow the government for the U.S. Sanctions might seem like a nonviolent way to make governments do what we want. That's why even our favorite and most progressive members of Congress often end up voting for them. But in reality, sanctions are an admission that you have no policy, but you want to take what you think is a moral stand. So you put an entire country under siege. Sanctions are violent, sanctions kill, and sanctions don't work unless the goal is in fact to bring a nation to its knees. They're a form of collective punishment through economic sabotage. You could even say economic terrorism. Once sanctions are imposed, even targeted sanctions, it ruins the economy because no investor wants to get involved in a country that's under sanctions and risk costly legal penalties for potential violations. So they turn self-sufficient countries into aid-dependent nations, destroying their industries which can't function under sanctions that make it impossible for them to participate in the global economy. They hurt the most vulnerable, poorest people in society, causing food and medicine shortages that lead to disease and death. And they often empower the very regimes they're supposed to weaken by making them the sole provider for a desperate population that can only think of its daily subsistence. Let's start with the most recent country to come under brutal U.S. sanctions, Venezuela. The mainstream press has given lots of airtime to stories about the very real economic crisis that's caused some 3 million people to leave Venezuela. They blame the economic crisis on the government's mismanagement of the currency and falling oil prices. What they don't tell you is that U.S. sanctions helped cause this crisis and have made economic recovery impossible. The sanctions prevent Venezuela from restructuring its debt, importing food and medicine, and they block Citgo, the U.S.-based Venezuelan state oil company, from accessing its profits. The sanctions, which were imposed under Obama and then intensified by Trump, are so draconian, they're literally killing Venezuelans. That's according to the first UN rapporteur to visit Venezuela in 21 years. He said sanctions on Venezuela are so severe, they amount to crimes against humanity.
Commercial interests throughout the world are afraid to have anything to do with Venezuela. That amounts to virtually an economic blockade.
The sanctions have been cranked up in recent months, with Trump's national security advisor John Bolton announcing that the U.S. will freeze Venezuelan assets and block billions of dollars in oil payments. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, and the U.S. is the largest purchaser of that oil. 95% of Venezuela's export revenue comes from oil. So cutting off the government's access to dollars from oil will literally starve the economy of hard currency needed to pay for imports of food and medicine, which could create a humanitarian catastrophe. If it sounds like theft, that's because it is. John Bolton admitted as much.
Venezuela is one of the 3 countries I call the troika of tyranny. It'll make a big difference to the United States economically if we could have American oil companies really invest in and produce the oil capabilities in Venezuela. It'd be good for the people of Venezuela. It'd be good for the people of the United States.
It's all about the oil, baby. It's the resource curse. Economist Mark Weisbrot put it this way. How does a country with 500 billion barrels of oil and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of minerals in the ground go broke? The only way that can happen is if the country is cut off from the international financial system. Otherwise, Venezuela could sell or even collateralize some of its resources in order to get the necessary dollars. Despite all the suffering this is causing to average Venezuelans, liberals are still cheering on the sanctions.
Again, I want him gone. Like, we should all be very clear, like, this would be good. I do think there's a different way to go about this, which is to be tightening the noose, to be tightening sanctions.
Do you support the sanctions?
Adios. Yes, I support.
Wouldn't that hurt ordinary people?
I think we need sometimes to demonstrate that Mr. Maduro has hurt ordinary people every single day.
The U.S. is obviously trying to create a humanitarian crisis in Venezuela through sanctions, so it can then use that crisis as a pretext for intervention to overthrow the government, all while pretending to care about delivering aid to Venezuelans, which is an obvious PR stunt.
The cost of this.
Good evening, viewers. Welcome to Punchline Africa TV, broadcasting all the way from Nairobi, the Republic of Kenya. Viewers, this is MATSANGA Africa Perspective program, a show that brings Africa closer to where you are, a show that shows the mighty of Africa, that defends Africa, that tells Africa what ails Africa. We discuss, we dissect, we give solutions where possible. This show is a show for the people in the diaspora, the people in Africa, those under sanctions, under conflicts, peace processes, regime change, which we see that has replaced military coups, the show that talks about democracy, governance, the show that looks at conflicts, what ails Africa. This is MATSANGA Africa, MATSANGA Africa Perspective. Today in the show, I will be looking at Zimbabwe, the sanctions against Zimbabwe. What has ailed Zimbabwe? Why sanctions? What kills Africa? Why the West puts sanctions on African countries and African countries don't react? Why should there be an embassy, bigger compound in Harare that gives sanctions, that directs how Harare should behave, that collects information on the entire African continent? What kills Africa? What destroys Africa? I want to look at the impact of sanctions on the great country of Zimbabwe. Viewers, Zimbabwe has had episodes of sanctions. First, unilateral sanctions put in 1966, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2005, 2008, and 2009, and up to today. Those were the times when sanctions in Zimbabwe were put, and some of them were when Ian Smith was alive and ruling Zimbabwe. Some were were in the post-election, post-independence Zimbabwe under the leadership of President Robert Mugabe. Since the end of the Cold War then, the use of sanctions has become the daily art of the Western countries to molest, to belittle, to demonize the few African and other third world countries that don't toe the line of the imperial mercantile capitalism that we see that actually colonized most of these countries before 1884. Sanctions on Zimbabwe have had a very dangerous impact. I want to warn my people that sanctions don't hurt leadership in Africa. Sanctions hurt the people in Africa. Anytime you put sanctions on any country in Africa, whether targeted sanctions or whatever sanctions there, they kill the people. They deprive the children from any medicine. They fail to give services to the people. The leaders can have the services, but the people might not have access to the services. This time, the United States sanctions against Zimbabwe are not called for. Zimbabwe had an election, as we shall see from all the pictures behind you. Zimbabwe had an election. Zimbabwe itself went through a democratic election, which is and was supervised, organized, recognized by the African Union, EU, and the United Nations. The sanctions, therefore, in Zimbabwe on this round cannot be justified. As we shall look through when I sit down in my next segment, you will see that it is just a time of regime change. The way Americans want to topple people in Africa. The way Americans want to overthrow governments in Africa. The way Americans want to regime change. Collect opposition parties. Fund opposition. Equip opposition to dismember Africa. Many people, you have seen the clip that was here before. Sanctions kill. Sanctions are inhuman. They have never been the best of our best at all. Viewers, Zimbabwe has suffered. From 1997 onwards, under the Lancaster Agreement, 15 years from 1980 to 1995, the Zimbabwe story was very clear. It was a story that there should be no change in the constitution of the Republic of Zimbabwe. President Mugabe and the then government of Conservative Party in Britain agreed that if there was a willing buyer, willing seller on the land issue, it would actually help in the smooth transition from the white-dominated agricultural sector to a black empowerment systems that exist in Zimbabwe. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, the late, and the Prime Minister John Major kept the promise. In 1998, a new government came into power. The Labour Party swept and won an election, became the new different government in the United Kingdom. Under the auspices of Tony Blair and many other people, Zimbabwe was targeted. Several ministers, including Peter Hain, Claire Short, Tony Blair, Robin Cook, and the rest targeted Zimbabwe. Very many prominent MPs like Kate Hoy, the MP for Vaxo constituency, became anti-Zimbabwe and staged managed a so-called alleged violence that was supposed to be to demonize the country of Zimbabwe. What the West does and what the West did was to isolate a leader, surround him with bad names, surround him with a lot of accusations. We have seen people surrounding Saddam Hussein. He had chemical weapons of mass destruction that could kill the world. We ended up having no chemical weapon coming from Baghdad itself, despite the fact that it was bombed down to ashes. No chemical weapon came out of Baghdad. Zimbabwe equally was targeted by the Labour government of Tony Blair, where Claire Short, as a Minister of International Development, decided that they would not go by the Conservative Party arrangement of willing buyer, willing seller, such that whoever wants to take land, because the policy of land distribution had started. There is one thing that you can condemn Mugabe up to the end, but you will not condemn him about the distribution of land that was under the auspices of 4,000 white commercial farmers compared to 14 million Zimbabweans, blacks, yellow, Indians who needed land to till, to farm, to produce, just as the white counterparts were doing. The situation in Zimbabwe, therefore, from 1997 to date, the targeted sanctions that were put, some were removed by the European Union. The continued sanctions by the American government of Trump continue to hurt the local people. There are no targeted sanctions that hurt the leadership, because the leadership can have it. But one wonders, as I go down to see it, why has America kept the biggest compound of international embassy? There is no other biggest embassy on the African continent apart from Zimbabwe. Why should America target Zimbabwe and avoid? And why hasn't Africa reacted? They tap the capital. Their companies trade through third parties. They take out what they want from Zimbabwe through third parties. And we are still watching. We watch the scenario. This happens day and night. At the same time, America says there are no sanctions against, Zimbabwe should have more sanctions, extend them, depending on how they like, which mood they are in, whom they want to appease. Viewers, in my next segment, I will show you the root causes of these sanctions. Thank you. Let's take a break. Let's look at the video from Zimbabwe before elections in 2017. 2018 elections, which took place, was verified by international observers as credible elections, but rejected by the malcontents of MDC. Thank you.
It is ridiculous and it is against the laws of nature that we can have somebody sitting pretty who takes home more money than the credible entrepreneur who is doing actual production of goods and services.
We always say it as it is. It is only in this country that when a thief is arrested, you hear elders from their tribe saying, "He is our son and he is our thief."
If you are deviant
Yes.
and I call you leader, probably you are already a leader, but you are leading in the wrong direction.
We want to see the role of the youth
Yeah.
in the security,
Yes.
governance,
Yes.
and development.
The youth that I meet and work with here, you know, we call them the millennials and X's and Y's, this and that. They don't necessarily want to live like their fathers and grandfathers, do business like their fathers and grandfathers. They're more independent, they're better educated, and they're the ones that are making everything move in this region.
We look at the issues, we talk about issues that impact people's lives in Africa. The African peoples themselves continue to cheer bad leaders, and because they cheer them on, they continue to be misled.
Let me ask you, doctor, would you rather be somebody who does not enjoy so much freedom but you are rich?
Yes.
Or you'd rather be poor who you are actually imprisoned by the poverty itself?
My goal is not to come here and say, I want the majority ownership, I want to own this, I want to own that, I want to do this. My goal is we all make money and we're all happy, and I help build a big business here.
Punchline is for Africa, with Africa, from Africa. MATSANGA Africa Perspective, broadcasting again from London and in Nairobi. This is MATSANGA Africa Perspective program of Punchline Africa TV. Tonight, our topic is, do sanctions against Zimbabwe hurt the government or the people of Zimbabwe? As stated much earlier in my opening remarks, I want to make it categorically clear that sanctions anywhere in the third world, wherever they are applied, whether Venezuela, whether Russia, whether Iran, whether which country in the third world that you apply sanctions, whether Libya, whether Sudan, whether South Sudan, these sanctions hurt the common person. The citizen of that country is always hurt by sanctions. Sanctions are as bad as terrorism. Sanctions are as bad as homegrown terror groups. Sanctions kill economically. Sanctions put the people at a risk to other international agencies and risks to other international diseases. Sanctions cripple the people of any nation that you put them on. As you know, since the Cold War, the use of sanctions as a soft approach of international policy and diplomacy of the United States has continued to bring a lot of havoc to many African countries. There are many African countries on the continent like Sudan, where they have finally succeeded in creating what we call a regime change through sanctions. They isolate you, they target you, they demonize you, then later on send the opposition. Is there something that Africa can do to bring about the social transformation that can stop this type of malaise that Americans have put on us? Since 2001, the United States of America, through the adoption of ZIDRA, which is Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery, imposed target sanctions on elected leaders of Zimbabwe. Since 2001, the same Zimbabwe has undergone quite a lot of hardships, has undergone lots of disease, medicine not available in hospitals, children dying of diseases that could be cured because the leaders cannot travel to engage other international leaders in bringing about the things that are needed in the world, in the country. Since the enactment of ZEDRA by the United States Congress, the IMF, the World Bank, and the other international agencies have also denied Zimbabwe the access much needed at a full scale to this country called Zimbabwe. The extensions, the credits, the guarantees, the external market facilities, the financial aid, thus indicating to the people of Zimbabwe that there is something very, very wrong that has taken place and that is taking place. Sanctions seem to have failed to achieve the intended objective in Zimbabwe, because the intended objective in Zimbabwe is to swipe out ZANU-PF. But they have instead hurt the people. The Americans are not interested in having ZANU-PF as leaders in Zimbabwe. Those who are watching and those who are friends of the people of Zimbabwe must understand that it is the tactic of the American people to remove ZANU-PF, to remove it, wipe out, to pacify it from the leadership of the people of Zimbabwe. The current systems that are under lock and key, or under key and lock by the American intelligence CIA systems, indicate that they wanted to foster a regime change supplied, equipped logistically from its own members and friends. The members in Zimbabwe of opposition, since elections were conducted in 2008, 2018, Zimbabwe conducted an election. On July 30th, the Constitutional Court after that upheld the results of the elections. In a normal democracy and a normal situation where the Constitutional Supreme Court has declared as an election either as null and void or upheld an election, the people who took part in such an election should be able to, one, accept the results of such an election. What has happened in Zimbabwe is worrying. The leader of opposition, Comrade Chamisa, Nelson Chamisa, since then has said he doesn't recognize the government of President Emmerson Mnangagwa. He has declared himself the people's president. He has threatened on several occasions to come out and demonstrate. He has called on people in Zimbabwe to demonstrate, to take over the streets of Harare, demonstrate against Emmerson Mnangagwa in a purpose and regards the removal of Emmerson Mnangagwa from power. The situation in Zimbabwe is aggravated by economic hardships. As you are aware that a country without one, extensions, credit extensions, credit or guarantees, external market facilities, and a financial aid is a country without, is like a car without petrol, but full of potential to be driven. Zimbabwe, therefore, suffers one of the worst and very disturbing phenomenon in as far as regime change is concerned. It is this that has forced me and us to look at what went wrong. The background which I've given you in the first place shows to you that land was at the center of all this. It is the land that triggered the sanctions, because this land was acquired by the then colonial masters forcefully from the Africans, and the then leadership of Zimbabwe of Robert Mugabe returned the land to one man, one farm. Those who had many farms were told to return and remain with one farm. But those leaders did not want to do so. The situation escalated until we had a new government in Britain headed by Tony Blair. In 2002, the European Union imposed restrictive measures, including, among others, froze all assets of those who are close to President Mugabe. Selective members of President Mugabe's cabinet and individuals associated with the government of Zimbabwe were put under the sanction radar system. Britain's Minister of African Affairs, Baldwin, said her country supports an extension of EU sanctions against Zimbabwe and will not back its plan to return to the Commonwealth. Events must be changing. Britain is making its own changes. We wait and see. When the Commonwealth comes to Rwanda, how far the Zimbabweans will struggle to come to Rwanda to make their case to return to the Commonwealth. It is very important that the American sanctions that are still on the people of Zimbabwe are the ones that has worried us. We are worried. There are people who need to move to make a move. But what can Zimbabwe and Africa do to make sure that they send a signal to the people of America that sanctions don't hurt the leaders, but they hurt the citizens? If you go to Zimbabwe, the biggest embassy of American hegemony on this continent is found in Zimbabwe. What do they do in this embassy? What do they gather that cannot be gathered elsewhere in Pretoria? What is it that they know which we don't know? What activities do they conduct? Has the government of Zimbabwe sat down to think on those lines that if these companies that come in a third-party system use third parties, proxy, to take out Zimbabwe's money, diamonds, gold, and pretending not to be American companies, and yet they are working on behalf of the Americans, should be also sanctioned? Because Zimbabwe does not lack where to sell its diamonds. Neither Zimbabwe lacks where to sell its gold, its flowers. There are many countries in the world. The people of Zimbabwe and the government of Zimbabwe must move also to look at companies that are associated with the American companies that actually have used proxies. This is what I discovered this morning. They use proxies to buy, to trade, to take the capital, and at the same time they are putting sanctions on this country, killing the people, at the same time trading and taking away the wealth of the people of Zimbabwe. It is therefore sad that the United States President Trump again extended sanctions against Zimbabwe without looking at the conditions of how people are suffering. There is one thing in Africa that people should know. If we keep quiet without talking about these sanctions, if we go on dilly-dallying, if we don't take a stance that we took a stance against ICC, and one ICC exposed the ICC, we took a stance to tell the people of the world that sanctions are killing the people of Zimbabwe. Sanctions are not killing the leaders of Zimbabwe. The leaders of Zimbabwe can get anything they want, but the people of Zimbabwe who are dying because of American hegemony, the stupidity of Donald Trump heaping sanctions on a country that is already sinking, is what Africans must stand up. Those who are diplomats and who want to play diplomatic role is not my role. My role is to express and expose the malcontents that have driven Africa into a conflict. The malcontents that want to drive Africa into a conflict. Regime change. The regime change that we see in Tripoli. The regime change that we see in Benghazi. The regime change that we see in Khartoum, Mali, Benin, Central African Republic. This is what we must condemn. Africa cannot stand and watch the children of Zimbabwe perish. Lack of medicine, treatable diseases cannot be, because some superpower stands to say, we don't want to deal with X, we want to deal with Y. Opposition parties in Africa have become irrelevant, have become conduits of imperialism. Nelson Chamisa is a conduit of George Soros' fury on Zimbabwe. He picks money from George Soros. He picks money from Vanguard Africa. He picks money from Kofi Annan Foundation. Brings it to dismember his own people. Is it the Africa we want? People of Africa must stand up and tell America, enough is enough. The strategy is to dismember ZANU-PF, ANC, MPLA, FRELIMO, CCM, NRM, to get out of the surface. If you didn't know, I'm telling you now. It is not a strategy of Mnangagwa or a strategy of anybody they don't like. It is a strategy of wiping out revolutionary parties. The people of Zimbabwe must listen. Don't listen to hoyo hoyo. Listen to people who have knowledge, who follow these events. We have had enough. A country cannot die of malaria. The children cannot die of malaria, of hunger, high prices of fuel, high prices of foodstuff, when America is basking in the glory in our own country called Zimbabwe, with the biggest compound spying on the people of Zimbabwe, collecting logistical support on the people of Zimbabwe, enjoying the privileges of the people of Zimbabwe. It is time that Africa wakes up. Condemnation alone does not solve the problem. Where sanctions have been inflicted on the people, they kill. There is no difference between sanctions and the terrorism, because both of them kill. As the people of Somalia die of terrorism, the people of Zimbabwe are dying on another format of terrorism called sanctions. time has come for us to say what we want to say. You don't need a Zimbabwean to say it. We need an African to say it. Mr. Nelson Chamisa and the likes on the continent who are being used to destroy Africa. Time will tell. Time is on watching you. From the time of an election, can I pose a question then? If the Supreme Court of any country in Africa, including Uganda, where I was born, where, as all of you know, the elections are always halfway in the moon, halfway on earth. But once the Electoral Commission declares a candidate and having won, and once the Supreme Court of the Republic of Uganda says, although there were a few mistakes, they did not mar the entire exercise of an election. That is governance. That's rule of law. The people like Chamisa should accept and move on. The Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court of Zimbabwe, ruled that there were a few of these difficulties, but overall, with all the reports that came, the election was conducted in a manner that fits the people of Zimbabwe. Why should Chamisa hold us hostages? Why should we be held hostages by one small boy holding us hostages, going to pick money from George Soros, eating the money with the family and the friends and the relatives, while most of the Zimbabweans are suffering, calling them to come on the streets to destroy whatever little they have? Why? Those are hard facts. The countries that are supporting Chamisa are well known. Some are in Southern Africa themselves, and I will name them. Those that are supporting regime change in Zimbabwe, we know you. We follow you. Zimbabwean intelligence might not follow you, but we follow you. We know who you are. We know the people buying guns at the moment to go and dismember Mnangagwa. We know you. We are aware of what you are doing. But we are not going to keep quiet. You are using American money and George Soros to dismember a country in the center of Africa. If you dismember Zimbabwe, South Africa will be dismembered. The rest of those countries will be dismembered. Therefore, we stand as patriots together with our groups. Pan-African Forum, Pan-Africanism will never be stopped. You have no way to stop Pan-Africanism. We stand to condemn, we stand to study. We shall expose from today onwards. I will expose the American hegemony on Zimbabwe. Americans must learn a lesson that as much as they do what they are doing to Venezuela, a country that was feeding its people, you sanction them not to sell their oil. You want to sanction us in Africa not to eat. What you are doing in Tripoli, in Libya, where you have armed General Haftar, Khalifa Haftar, General Haftar Khalifa, from Benghazi with arms, with guided air to ground, sea, from Mediterranean Sea, to kill the people, the government, supported by the UN, the AU, and other nations, is wrong. Who gave General Khalifa Haftar guns and airplanes? A rebel officer cannot have guns. It is the French. The French are supporting General Haftar Khalifa to dismember the government in Tripoli. That's what they want to do to Zimbabwe. They want to arm people. They are busy selling arms to G40 to destroy the government of Zimbabwe. If we don't talk, we shall run with planes to save. Why can't we talk now? Calling for sanctions against your country. Changarai died calling for sanctions and failed. Another one, this one, will die for nothing. Will wait and wait and wait and wait. Because they eat this money. They don't use it. They eat the money. How much money has George Soros pumped in Nelson Chamisa? Look at his accounts abroad. Go to South Africa and check his accounts. I don't want to display them here. Look at the money that is being funded, pumped into Zimbabwe to reorganize, to organize, to supply logistically like they have done. Look at it. Should we keep quiet as Africans every day? Postpone this, postpone this. What do we postpone? My foot. Just come on head on with these guys. These guys are plotting to overthrow a government. We know them. We know who they are. We know where they are. You want us to keep quiet? Every day you tell us keep quiet. Wait what? When they have already killed the people with sanctions. Now they are fuming, they are buying, they are drying, they are putting all their arsenal together to cause insurgents within Zimbabwe. And we are watching. People are telling us, Bukura, 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 tomorrow. That's what Bashir told us. That's what Bashir told me. Bukura, I'll work on it. The people destroying Khartoum are based in Jamena. The supply lines in Khartoum come from Jamena. Don't be shocked that the supplies in Zimbabwe come from somewhere. What have you done as a Zimbabwean to make sure that that supply is cut off? And you are telling us, boys, wait what? We see these things coming. If the same member of the United Nations Security Council called France can equip aeroplanes to a general, a terrorist who helped to kill Gaddafi. Gaddafi was telling them, you are killing me, but you are leaving the terrorist. Look at what has happened to Libya today. Libya was a place where you could, when it is 12 noon or 1 o'clock, when the bells ring in Tripoli, you leave your shop even open with the money. Nobody could steal your money and go to mosque and come back. Today, Libya is a begging bowl of Africa. Do we need such a begging bowl in Southern Africa? No. Those handling the situation in Zimbabwe, I am fed up of Bukura. Tell Bukura to yourselves, we must expose these people from today. We must follow them, and we are following you. We want to expose you. We know what you are planning. Don't tell lies to the president that these things are okay. What is okay? There's nothing okay there. There are people planning, pouring money, surrounding you. They want to throw you out. The purpose is to get ZANU-PF wiped out. I've also warned my other comrade brother-in-law across in Rwanda
They want MPLA out. They want SWAPO out. They want ANC out. Look at the question of land in South Africa. Look at where it is ending. Tell me where it is going to end. Tell me. Is that not a recipe for disaster? What Mugabe did, nobody will undo it. He gave land to the people. You can die of hunger, but you are still on your plot. What is happening in South Africa is laughable. The purpose is to inject this state of confusion, of apathy against ANC in South Africa. The people talking loudest in South Africa are on the payroll of the French intelligence systems. And then they are also on payroll of George Soros to finish South Africa. South Africa is sitting on a time bomb. What Mugabe did for Zimbabweans, let God help him. Keep him. Let God keep him. He did a great job. Distribution of that land. We can sort the rest in the courts. We can compensate them. There is nothing wrong. The government is right to compensate because it must adhere to the rule of law. I am against those who want to kill Zimbabwe, and I have no regrets for that. The opposition is funded. Let me give you quick examples. If you go to Khartoum, a few months ago, 1 year ago, or 2 years ago, I was in Khartoum. This is a true story. I saw what happened in Khartoum. I was called to address a conference of all chief justices in the world, in Africa and abroad, who are diaspora Africans. When we were seated at the dinner table with His Excellency, because I was tackling the issue of International Criminal Court as an expert, an activist, a Pan-African activist who says the court is wrong, is a bad court, is a smelly court. Some people thought I was joking. Some people thought I was joking about ICC. Where is it today? Where is it? It's gone. In Gambia, there is a warrant of arrest for Fatou Bensouda. We want her to stand trial. You don't play with me and survive. I told you. And anybody down there in Zimbabwe who is confusing the president, check on it. Check me. I am going to speak the truth from today. I shame you. Anyone who does not see the regime change coming and you say you are helping, you are useless. I told General Bashir, when he told me that the French are doing the roads in Khartoum and the canals and they beautify and put the city back, I looked at him, I said, do you know who took you to the ICC? It is the French. French pay for 3/4 of the budget of ICC. A jail, the Montego Bay of Europe, that takes Africans. Only takes Africans. Show me one white man arrested, taken there. Until they touch the Americans. That's when America turned and supported me now. I'm talking with authority. Authoritatively. Touch me and you see. I'm telling the Americans exactly what they have done wrong on ICC. At that time, they forced us to go to take our people into ICC. Today, they are also now first to face the ICC. They have said, you touch one American, you will be bombed. Why can't we Africans? And you find some African ministers of foreign affairs telling us, oh, we engage ICC. Oh, we are going to ICC, my foot. What ICC? Engage ICC to go what? Babuko was trumped up. Bemba trumped up charges. Gaddafi, Saidi Gaddafi, I struggled. It's me who wrote a document. It is on record. Telling the British government, please, let's spare Gaddafi's son. I want to thank the British government for what they did. The Foreign and the Commonwealth Office for listening. For those who think they don't listen, it's your problem. Today, I have nothing to worry about. Now I am on the right path, and I will use this right path to defend Zimbabwe again. Saidi Gaddafi will take part in an election. Now, when they saw that he's going to take part in an election in Tripoli, and the boss probably win, they got General Khalifa Haftar, gave him arms, is now bombarding Tripoli. African Union, which is already compromised, it's captured. Did you know that African Union is captured? There is no African Union anymore. It's a French African Union captured by a man called Mahamat Faki from Chad. Can you trust a president of Chad who goes to be bribed $2 million? He's the one who has supported what has thrown Bashir in jail. Can such a president be worth it? Can you call that African Union? General Haftar, Khalifa is supported by Egypt. What is Egypt's role today? Chairman of African Union. Egypt, United Arab Emirates, France, are the ones killing people in Tripoli. The planes that are shooting, bombing down Tripoli are coming from Egypt. And on the Mediterranean Sea from the French Navy systems that are there. What is the AU? Show me. Show me. MATSANGA Africa Perspective is open, is never intimidated. You don't intimidate us. Never. We have no... Look at what is happening in Cameroon. Tell me why Cameroonians cannot have their two states as far as Resolution 1608 of the United Nations General Assembly of 1961, February 8th. Why can they have two states? Why? Because France is a member of the permanent representative of the United Nations Security Council. Shame upon you. I want to stand firm. Changing a government for the sake of changing does not solve the problems of Africa. Changing the governments in Africa through regime change and the violent demonstrations does not solve the problem of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe today faces the same challenges that many African countries that have been isolated have faced. But the problem of Zimbabwe goes beyond, because Zimbabwe has no economy, functioning financial institutions, functioning export and regulations, aid, credit, guarantees. It is time for Africa to sit down and reevaluate itself on the way forward on how they can support the people of Zimbabwe. We must retaliate on the American sanctions that have put the people of Zimbabwe at crossroads. We must do something to stop the dying of the people because of treatable diseases like malaria, cholera, and others that can be managed if the government of Zimbabwe had access to international credit lines. We must find a solution for affordable funding for markets. If Zimbabwe was allowed to sell their goods directly without using proxies, Americans are using proxies, proxy companies to buy Zimbabwe goods, and politically they have told us they have put sanctions on Zimbabwe. We must find a retaliatory systems that we as Africans, we as the spirit of Nkrumah, the spirit of NASA, the spirit of Nyerere, the spirit of Nyerere, the spirit of Kwame Nkrumah, the spirit of Gabriel Nasser, the spirit of Amir Cabral, the spirit of Patrice Lumumba, the spirit of Jomo Kenyatta, the spirit of Obote runs into me. I will never stand alone. I will stand praying for this spirit to guide me, to expose enemies of Africa who torment us. I will never stand alone. The spirit of Haile Selassie runs through me. I will never stand alone. The spirit of Mandela stands through me. The spirit of Nelson Mandela grows stronger. A rainbow country left now for Tatars of Malema and others to talk and take a chunk against ANC. This is all regime change. If you see the waffling of Malema, you could know that there is a regime change on the doorsteps. Who funds him? The spirit of Samora Machel. The spirit stands up to speak. But we speak with facts that today Zimbabwe has been added on another sanction list to be killed, for more people to die. African Union has not done anything to protest against this spirit of anything that we have disagreed with. Viewers, mine is a call, an African call, that there must be a paradigm shift from mere standing and saying Bukra. Saying tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. Tomorrow what? We are being surrounded. The G40 is going into inquiries are set. They are setting inquiries of the G40 to buy arms to come and destabilize Zimbabwe. Do Zimbabweans want a destabilized state? Do you want a destabilized state? Does Africa want another destabilized state? What we have seen in Libya, isn't it enough? Isn't it enough? Viewers, sanctions therefore against the people of Zimbabwe. The Trump administration officials had said sanctions will remain until the government or President Emerson Mnangagwa changes Zimbabwe's laws restricting media freedom, allowing protests. You can see that. Finally, you can see for yourself. Can you see for yourself what is happening in Zimbabwe? They want to restrict which role there is a media working in Zimbabwe. The media is working. All foreign journalists are reporting from Zimbabwe. Is Trump very confused? Is he senile? Is he mad with power? Doesn't he see Al Jazeera, BBC, CNN reporting from Harare? Allowing protests. Which direction of protests? What type of protests? What type of protests does Trump want on the streets of Zimbabwe? What will the sanctions help this? What protest then what? They are already there. They have been moving, gathering, holding their rallies. At least in Zimbabwe, they hold the rallies without interruption of police. Some countries in Africa, it is impossible even to hold one rally or even to leave your own house. The question of Uganda, leaving your own house, you are restricted in the house. But in Zimbabwe, people are campaigning, they are talking freely about the opposition parties in parliament. Members of opposition are calling their rallies. Mr. Trump, don't you see this? Or you are just buffooned by very many of these ideas of use, of thinking that Africans don't think, they have no brains, therefore they will listen to every rubbish that you keep on telling us on a daily basis. Unfortunately, the sanctions have still been, they have been unable. Targeted sanctions can never remove a government in the third world. I want to submit. Mr. Brian Mutambo, yes, they are buying arms. The G40 is buying arms. I've got all the intelligence data. We have to be careful. We have to tell the world. This thing of you Zimbabweans saying tomorrow, wait, oh wait, that's rubbish to you. Not me anymore. I have to tell the truth. People are buying arms to go and destabilize the government of Zimbabwe. It's up to you. I don't work for the systems of Zimbabwe. I've told you the truth as a Pan-African. So check the facts. You want to have a civil war? Check. You want to have a civil war where some of us have had a civil war. We have seen what is in Libya. You want to bring it near Southern Africa for the sake of power, for the sake of Jonathan Moyo, for the sake of Kaskwere and the rest. Rubbish. The people must face these guys. Tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. The more you go on hiding these things from the president, the worse it is. Oh, sir, we are doing this. There is nothing they are doing. Someone is hiding this. Someone thinks he wants to eat in two ways. You can't eat two ways. You have to eat one way. Either you are with Mnangagwa or you are not. And I'm sorry. Thank you. Let the people of Zimbabwe know that some people are plotting to destroy the government of Zimbabwe. We are not going to keep quiet. We are Africans. I'm not a Zimbabwean, but I've defended Zimbabwe for the last 17 years. And I still continue to do so. But I'm not going to wait here and the people buy arms. They contact arms dealers to supply arms, to infiltrate arms, to destroy Zimbabwe. You cannot do that. And I will name the list in my subsequent broadcasts where they are doing, because I don't need to sit with anybody now. I'm fed up. Kabisa. I will be naming this so that people can know. If you are intelligence office in Zimbabwe, pick it from here. That's it, what I've decided. Enough is enough. I don't want to support anybody who wants to kill anyone. No. If dictatorship is in Zimbabwe, then why Chamisa still reading his Bible on top of the tree? I have equally said Uganda, Bob Wine is like a son to President Museveni. Let him call him. Call him like a son. We don't need guns. We don't need uprisings. We don't need regime change. We don't need demonstrations. They will take us nowhere. We shall destroy property. The guns, if they are got in Zimbabwe, they will kill Zimbabweans. They will not be killing, they don't know who is ZANU-PF. They kill you. So we must expose these people who are buying guns. Hey! This is MATSANGA Africa Perspective, a program for Africa, defending Africa, saying the truth, delivering it as it is. If you have any problem, let's have judgment at God's center. Viewers, unfortunately for Trump, he still thinks that protests can change governments, and he wants to equip, supply, support logistically the MDC through Vanguard Africa, Kofi Annan Foundation, George Soros, Open Society Foundation, the South African Education Center or Council, whatever call it. Those are the people. People of Zimbabwe watch that South African Litigation Center. Is the one pumping in money logistically. They will continue to buy water. They will continue to buy wood while people picket violently, stick in the capital. All your plans are with us. Those who have ears, hear. Thank you very much, viewers. That brings me to the end of our show today. It is a show that has shown exactly what is happening about sanctions on Zimbabwe. As much as the Americans want to make a point that they don't trade with Zimbabweans, they use third-party proxies to trade, to take diamonds and gold reserves and other items through third-party reserves. It is sad, therefore, that we can sit here and watch a situation grow from bad to worse. We have done so, Manyika. Max Manyika, you were still younger when some of us were fighting to restore parties. There was no political party in Uganda. If you go back to your BBC programs, Max Manyika, you will find I am one of those who agitated for parties to return. The President Museveni, who travels all the way to Harare and Bulawayo, did not want to allow any single party to operate, but I forced him, I worked on him, I campaigned internationally on Focus on Africa, BBC, World Service. I brought him to accepting parties to return to that nation. That's why Besigye is able to have a party today. There were no parties. I want to say, I want to thank you so much, all of you, for your contribution. There are so many comments that I cannot read any of them, all of them at a go. I'll try to read the few that are available. There are so many because some have been taken by time. will take Mr. Ekede Wagagas, says, Dr. Matsanga, let us start from AU before going to UN. What has the AU done for Africa? Can the AU resolve conflicts in Africa? Yeah, that's a good question. They can't. They are already bought. They are captured. Then Nyandara County is in Kenya is where 70 people, almost all of them, men killed themselves through suicide. Is it? We haven't seen that report yet. Baby Kamusa, good evening, Africa. The element MK's Africans are so useless and senseless. Indeed, say that again. Please, Dr. Matsanga, update us on the serious situation about Nyandara County. I'll work on that tomorrow in the Good Morning Show. This program provides information for all Africa by recording 2 major live events. Thank you very much. Ellen Lunchins, good morning, Africa. Listening from Zimbabwe, Baba, Hosea Masenza. Thank you very much, brother. Tatenda, Baba. Kasim Hitimama, can't you see Africans coming from these said developed countries are the ones who destroy our motherland? They come with bad ideologies and they work with the white people who want Africa to be on their feet. I agree with you, Kasim Hatimama. Sue Onyoni watching. Klama Kamujisha watching from Entebbe, Uganda. Thank you very much, my brother. Ezebel Chidi watching. Esau Muzidende, about time we take this Pan-African stance on Zimbabwe. Information dissemination is a key. Exactly. Esau Muzidende, we are not going to wait. We better give information that those who can see it, have it. Max Manyika, you said let opposition in Zimbabwe deal with ZANU-PF. What opposition? There is no opposition, Manyika. I've told you there is no opposition. Chamisa is a pawn of George Soros. Mr. Max Manyika, you live in California, in America. You know that George Soros launders money, but he has never been arrested by the American government. But that money that he launders and the bank city in Paris is kept by the Paris government that uses it to destabilize Africa. Full stop. Anything else, Manyika? Because you are my Mukwasha, I'm not going to say anything bad or even insult you. But I will only educate you slowly, Manyika. Chamisa should understand that Zimbabwe is his home, is his country. Let him advocate for togetherness, unity. Let him accept that elections were finished 1 year ago. We don't need to talk about elections. You talk about elections until another election time comes. That is stupid. That's very silly of an opposition leader. Unless Zimbabweans have nobody to replace an opposition leader of that status, whose status seems to be moribund. Thank you. Viewers, I leave it to you. I want to take this opportunity to thank all my presenters, all my colleagues in the production room. I want to thank all those, especially the Google lady who talked about how sanctions kill. I want to thank all the people in South Africa, in Zimbabwe in particular, that it is better to have a country without food than to have a country with war. Thank you very much. Let God help us, and may God help all of you. Until we meet tomorrow at 11 sharp East African Standard Time on our satellite system through Berlin. Thank you very much. We started slowly. We are now linked to a satellite. You can't break us down. You can't do anything. Chamisa, you can run and hang on top of the church, but we are not going to keep quiet. We are going to expose the little, we can't do anything. We have told you what is correct. You like it or hate it, it is there. It is true that people are buying guns to fight Mnangagwa. It's a fact. We have records, we have contacts they have made. Don't forget that some of us have been in this game of rebel activities for a long time. So thank you very much. God bless you. God bless all of you. This station, therefore, closes down for Africa with Africa by Africa. Ciao.